Welcome to the Book of Urm. Tales of Piecora, the Haunted Fortress. Chapter 7. Magnusholio. Magnusholio. Ravsese was drawn out of the cordial Senzadi room in Piecora's wake, like a leaf fluttering through a gutter during a downpour. She was thankful of that, for she desperately didn't want to be in there any longer. Eindon Vandus was such a masterfully elusive target that she was beginning to have her doubts that the man was even drunk at all, that maybe it was all a performance to keep his audience on edge. She had seen the type before while she worked and lived in Veklische Mansion in Muth. But even now, drifting through the heavy door behind Piecora through the guards and plunging into the dense crowd of wealthy revellers all around them, she could feel her short-term memory slowly evaporate, as if meeting Eindon Vandus were a fever dream or a hallucination. She found it difficult to remember what he wore or what he looked like. The harder she worked at remembering, the harder it seemed to remember, and the further into abstraction the memory became. A monstrous trumpeting sound blared nearby to her right, giving her such a fright that she felt as if her skin had frozen completely solid. She jumped, throwing her hands into the air, and whipped her head to locate the source of the sound. They were adjacent to a wide hall with a tall, domed ceiling, and in the midst of the hall stood the most incredible creature, one that she had only read about in books back home. It was the size of a small house, with a thick hide the colour of grey clay, and its head elongated into a massive prehensile trunk. She couldn't believe her eyes. According to her reading, these creatures might be found within the jungles far to the south of Muth, beyond its borders on the same peninsula. It bellowed again, and she nearly lost her senses. The ring, she thought suddenly. The ring that Eindon gave to Piecora, that Piecora gave to Ravsese, was gone from her hand. She dropped to all fours, sinking into the lush, ornately designed carpet of crimson, gold and violet paisley patterns as fast as gravity would take her. Leather boots, pointed shoes, laced sandals and bare feet danced and stomped and spun all around her frantic hands as she desperately sought for the steel ring of Eindon. To her left, in deep shadow, she saw a metallic glint and immediately thrust her hand toward it, unintentionally flicking it further into the raucous crowd. She crawled after it while paying no mind to her obscenely ridiculous behaviour at the moment. All consideration for social protocol had left her, and now she was a grovelling creature hell-bent on retrieving the invaluable gift from Eindon that would make her escape from all of this possible. Someone tripped over her and fell back into the people adjacent to them. They all laughed and spilled drinks on themselves. For a brief moment, she allowed herself the outrageous speculation that nobody actually cared about her crawling about on the ground like some slimy log dweller, which only lent to further the depravity of the place in her mind. Finally, she came to a clearing among the legs and feet, as if it were a glade in a thick forest. A man knelt down to pick up the steel ring from the carpet. He wore a light grey long coat, with black leather boots and white trousers, all refined from extraneous decoration but exquisitely made. He had long silver hair tied back in a ponytail, and his bushy grey eyebrows matched his neatly trimmed beard. As he rose up with the ring in his hand, she clumsily got to her feet, clasped her hands together, and blurted, "Kind sir, good sir, thank you for finding my ring." The man looked up, but only with his eyes without lifting his face. His eyes were light blue, electric and commanding, set within a handsome, chiselled face of a man perhaps in his late 50s or early 60s. His eyes were not unfriendly, but there was something predatory, something malevolent and harshly judgmental behind his eyes, and she felt her heart in her throat. "Your ring?" he said. But then his eyes shifted slightly upward, and Ravsese suddenly realised her hood had fallen around her shoulders, exposing her pale white face, pink goat's eyes, and white goat horns. Quickly, she gathered her hood back over her head, while shivering in fear and shame. He then rose to his full height and looked down at her, like an owl discovers a small rodent hiding within its own nest. "Well, well, well," said the man quietly. Yet Ravsez could hear his every word as if he were right next to her. "Of all places, here you are, and with the marks of the Xianjian on your pretty face. Where might she be taking you? Tell me, where is that son of yours?" Ravsez was too frightened to speak. She stood in front of the tall man with her hand out, beckoning him to relinquish the ring, while shivering uncontrollably. She felt him step closer, and could smell his bitter cologne that reminded her of thawing ice in the cellars of Veklischer Mansion during the brutal winters of Muth. "Girl, why are you frightened?" the man asked softly. Despite the harshness of his eyes, there seemed to be no malice in his voice. "Do you not know what I offer you and your son? Has no one told you about the life waiting for you in my home?" She felt his smooth, moisturized hand beneath her chin, lifting her up to look into his face, which stood now very close to her own. "I paid a king's ransom for your freedom," he said. "Come back with me and see the life that awaits you and your son." "Freedom." She barely whispered the word with her trembling voice as she stared spellbound within the man's enrapturing gaze. But then the man collapsed, as if the ground fell out from under him, and quickly several people on either side caught him by the arms. "Not tonight, my love," said a melodious female voice. As the man fell, the tall, black and red-haired elf maiden that Ravsezi saw the previous night appeared close behind him with her index finger pressed against the side of his neck, leaving a tiny incision where her poisonous fingernail had punctured him. "Gather up the poor boy to his room. Make him comfortable. I'll see to him later," said the sultry elf maiden flatly. Carefully, 3 people dragged the man's limp body away. The elf maiden with the light honey-amber eyes and black-red hair then said to Ravsez, "Drop something?" She held the steel ring in her long porcelain palm. Ravsez nodded weakly while clutching the sides of her hood tight over her head with her hands. The elf maiden handed the ring to Ravsez. "Here, now tuck that into a pocket before something else happens. Gods, you're like a white mouse out in the rain. Take my hand," said the elf maiden. Cautiously, Ravsez acquiesced and took the elf maiden's hand. Her slender grip was surprisingly strong, and quickly she was tugged along through the crowd, weaving between people expertly, as if she were the tail of a snake slithering in the grass. They finally made it to the spiral stairs where she saw Piecora standing halfway up and searching the crowd. When Piecora found Ravsez, she leapt down and immediately confronted the elf maiden. In a blur of movements, the crowd around them cleared as the two briefly scuffled. After deftly dodging and fending off Piecora's lunging attempts to grab her, the elf maiden finally shouted with frustration, "Stop it, Xianjian! Does she look hurt to you? I'm taking her to you by the gods!" Piecora relented and placed a hand on Ravsez's shoulder. "I lost you," Piecora said. "Stag, I can't believe it. You were there, and then you were gone. I would have torn this place apart trying to find you. Are you all right?" Ravsez finally started breathing regularly again as she basked in the comfort of Piecora's presence. I became frightened by the, animal, or whatever it was. And then I lost the ring. Eindun's ring. It fell to the floor, and I dropped down to try to find it. And then, the elf maiden continued for Ravsez. She met old Hector Ganta himself, face to face even, and he saw her. I put him right to sleep, but I was a moment too late, and now he knows she's here. When he wakes up tomorrow, he will be quite displeased and very intentional with his efforts. We need to act quickly. Where's Raltin?" As if summoned by her voice, Raltin came scurrying into them from between a pair of legs in the crowd, gathered around them at the base of the spiral stairs. "Gods, we all got separated," he huffed. "The stairs be a perfect beacon. What did I miss?" "Proper introductions to start with," said the elf maiden. Raltin cleared his throat and said, "May I present Ashovai the Heroless, leader of the Talons o' Alagost. This be Piecora, the Sienjan guide, and this here be Ravzeza. Her son's upstairs in our room. Shall we go now and talk about what comes next? We secured Eindon's finances, now onto logistics and maybe find new lodging since we been made in Ganta be looking for us when he gets o'er his hangover." Piecora was the first up the stairs, wasting no time to get out of the congested Canonian crowd. When they reached the hall at the top of the stairs, they found the Talon guard sitting on the floor beneath the window at the opposite end of the hall. Piecora stood before the door to their room, trying the handle to check if it was locked, which it was. "Chicado!" called Ashovai. "Everything all right?" But the man beneath the window at the far end of the hall didn't move. She ran past Piecora as the Sienjan unlocked the door with the key and threw it open. Stepping inside, Piecora and Ravsisi found the room empty. "Ortor!" called Ravsisi, but there was no answer. Piecora raced to the open windows along the far wall of the room and looked down, but saw no evidence that the boy had fallen or climbed down from the windows. All of his things were still in the room, including his ratcatcher toy and his large duffel bag, but his knife was missing. "What mystery be this?" asked Raltin to himself. "Where's the boy gone? The door still be locked when we tried it." Ravsesi scoured the room, checking beneath every bed and table, every curtain. She then left and ran down the hall, trying other doors, calling her son's name. Finally, Ashovai stepped into the room and said slowly, "I think I might have an idea what's happened here tonight." She led them to the sleeping Talon guard and gently pushed his head to the side, exposing his neck. Holding a lit lamp near the guard, she showed them a fine incision in his neck, with a thin trickle of blood running down from his neck to beneath his shirt. "Exactly what I did to Hector my Ganta downstairs," she said. "But this wasn't my work. I've been downstairs all day and evening, and everyone here can attest to that. I've only taught this technique to a few people. Tell me, who is your hostess?" "Valesh Callistico," said Ravsesi. "She be startin' her shift midnight tonight, which is right round the corner, I believe," said Raltin. Ashovai stood up and leaned against the wall, hung the lamp on a hook and sighed. "This is why I don't have children," she said to herself. She then said to the group, "Valesh, she's an odd kid. I have my eye on her because I think one day she'll be a Talon. So I taught her a few things here and there, like the sleep touch, which you see here. She's a Callistico, but I don't think she has any immediate family, nor do I think she even has a home. Sometimes I take her in, feed her and so on, but I don't want to be too motherly and all. You understand me? I'm not the matronly type, and I don't want anyone to look after. Talons are enough for me. Valesh is a good worker. She's on time every day for her shift and works hard for the little she makes. When she leaves, sometimes I'll send someone to follow her, just to look after her. She always eludes us, though. We have no idea where she actually lives." Ashovai looked out the window and went on. "One night I took it upon myself to follow her after her shift. Some things you just have to do yourself, right? She's a hard brat to track, though. Took me all over the city, she did, over and under it, cutting through vacant buildings, then down into the sewer. I swear she was on to me and was trying to lose me. But then we came to Big Magnusholio, or the Big Hole. It's where the Callistico mansion once stood generations ago before it went down into the ground. Massive sinkhole opened right beneath the fortress and brought it all down under the city. Been that way ever since. Attempts were made by the city to seal it up, recover what was lost, build on top of it. But Eindon Vandus owns all of the property, and he's done nothing with it. It's treacherous around there nowadays, very dangerous. Wild dogs, giant rats, feral cats, and worse. Very unstable too. Some say it's even haunted. Adventurous types go down there and never come out." She looked at the group, her gaze finally settling upon Ravsese, and said, "That's where I followed Valesh Callistico. but I didn't go further that night. Once I knew where we were, I turned right around and walked back home, washing my hands of it all. She's a Callistico. It's her family's home. If she wants to visit it from time to time, who am I to stop her? It's her right. That's how I see it, regardless of Eindonvandus and whatever legal sorcery he wielded overnight to capture the family's wealth all that time ago. I was around back then, mind you. I knew Eindonvandus, hundreds of years ago. He just came out of nowhere. Nobody knew anything about him or his letters of marque, his family line, nothing. And he has this effect on people. They forget a lot of details after they meet him. But I know he's a charlatan, just a wealthy piece of filth who stole a family's fortune and ruined their name for generations. Sometimes I wonder if he knows about Valesh, but it's not my problem, so I don't get involved. An awkward silence passed over the group before Rultin said, "Wait, did you say you were around back then, when it all happened, the Callistico takeover?" "I did," said Ashravai. "So, you knew this Eindonvandus even back then?" Rultin asked. "Yes," said Ashravai, "as silly then as he is now." "How? How do you account for his age then? His longevity?" asked Rultin. "People say he's a figurehead, that multiple people have lived by his name, and this is how his identity continued for hundreds of years. Are you sure it is the same man?" "I am," said Ashravai. "But how?" asked Rultin. "Because he is not human," said Ashravai. "When you get to be as old as me, you learn a lot of things that are beyond what humans are capable of understanding, especially Canonians. Me, I just don't bother myself with it all. Let people be people, figure their own way out. I'm not here to hold anyone's hand. Canonians can't see beyond their own hands anyway." "Then what is he?" demanded Piecora loudly. "If he is not human?" "Don't know," said Ashravai. "There are many possibilities, but I see him playing people the way I play people, only I'm better at it, been around them longer." "Did she take Otor to this hole in the ground?" asked Piecora, her voice simmering with impatient anger. "That would be my guess," said Ashravai, "but I strongly suggest you don't go looking for them. It's a filthy, horrible place." Piecora punched a nearby door with her closed fist, cracking one of the wooden boards. "Shilth," she grumbled threateningly. "Enough of this Fidelkin talking." Then she spun on her heels and stormed down the hall while muttering, "I'm having it up to here with these Fidelkin bricklayers." "Wait!" cried Ravzizi. "I'm coming with you!" She then bounded after Piecora. "I'll, wait here, just in case the lads come back to the room," said Rultin. "I'll find you a new hostess to bring up some food and drink, rat friend," Ashravai said. "Doubt we'll be seeing the Callistico girl or the Unscavian boy tonight. Red or white, for your wine, Havner. I believe it'll be going with fish." Ravses leapt down the spiral stairs after Piecora, no longer able to hear the rest of the conversation between Rultin and Ashravai. Piecora was already on the other side of the nearest hall and making her way down into the cellars for the exit at which they came the previous night. Frantically, Ravzeze pushed her way through the crowds after Piecora, terrified that she might meet Hector Ganta again or one of his agents. Just as she was near the top of the stone steps leading down, the crowd surged her right past them, and she couldn't fight against it. She languished in hopeless exhaustion as the crowd funneled her along to whatever new distraction gripped the wealthy revellers, when a strong hand grabbed her arm and pulled her hard against the dense crowd. Slowly, Ravzizi was pulled through the crowd like a small fish on the end of a hook being drawn against the current of a powerful stream. She careened down the stone steps behind Piecora as the Xianjian held onto her arm with a grip that would strangle a coconut. Ravziz felt like a leaf flapping and floundering, twisting and turning down the stairs, barely staying upright while hanging from Piecora's grip. Finally, summoning all of her remaining strength, Ravzeze clawed her way up Piecora's back, wrapped her arms and legs around the powerful Xianjian woman's torso, and buried her face into Piecora's black braids. Piecora shoved the exit door open and ignored the guards' rehearsed salutations, spilling them into the eerie, nightmarishly red light of Rotauamund, the Mutan name for the full red moon, or Rubramiluna, as Ravsese learned the Canonians called it. It gazed down from the night sky at the ancient fortress of the Bishop's Lament and the surrounding courtyard, bathing it in a deep crimson juxtaposed by deep, impenetrable black shadows. "We're going to find your son," said Piecora murderously as she crossed the courtyard in long strides toward the stables. "And then we're getting out of this Efdelkin Shiendi hole. If I never see another bricklayer again, it'll be too soon." "How will we find the mansion ruins?" asked Ravsese, while still clinging onto Piecora, her eyes wet with tears. "I have eyes in the sky," said Piecora. At that moment, a long, sobering screech filled the air, and zipping past them with the speed of an arrow flew Hiero, the small bird of prey that was bonded to Piecora in some mysterious way that Ravsese couldn't yet understand. Thank you for listening to this chapter from the Book of Urm. If you enjoyed this reading, like and subscribe to our channel, and consider supporting us at the Book of Urm at patreon.com.